NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Mike, you ever get distracted when we're recording on Monday nights because you got fantasy football implications going on right now? Is that where your head is at?
Fantasy football implications? No, actually, surprisingly not, because I've either won or lost my week already, and tonight doesn't really mean a whole lot to me. So just going to enjoy it from a fan perspective and a betting perspective. I toss a couple bucks over at Bet Online. I'm on the Chiefs tonight. I think they'll kind of this means absolutely nothing to everyone who's going to listen to this on Tuesday. So, but I think the Chiefs might win this game.
I was gonna say outright. I think you definitely got it. I've got major fantasy.
Cut it. Hey Joe, I guessed exactly who was gonna win that game last night. I knew exactly what was gonna happen. I even guessed the right score. Could you imagine that? Crazy stuff. Won a bunch of money off Bet Online. It was awesome. Go team.
Well, let's hope we're as smart about hockey as we are about football, although I haven't won my fantasy matchup yet. Joe DiBiase from Locked On Sabres, Mike Distefano from Locked On Leafs joining you here on the Tuesday edition of the Locked On NHL podcast. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. We are available on all platforms. You can check us out on YouTube. If you're not watching us currently, you can watch this episode to see our beautiful faces, because obviously that's what everybody wants to see right now.
So hold on. Are we now considered YouTubers by chance?
This is a good question.
We YouTubers? Because we provide content on YouTube. I mean, this is a podcast first and foremost, how it started. But now we have the video portion that we post up on YouTube. Can we call ourselves YouTube social? Like, are we the Jake Paul of hockey podcasts?
I think because we do it regularly, I think you could consider us YouTubers.
All
but
right.
I don't know. Are we making it for YouTube? I think we're making it for many things. We're making it the podcast for the listener. You know, the guy driving around, the girl that's at the gym. Yeah, or maybe you're just sitting on your couch and watching us, or on your phone. So I think because we're targeting a multitude of different platforms, you could say it, but I might want to fight you on it.
All right.
Would you ever introduce yourself as a YouTuber?
Never.
Would you put that on a resume ever?
No, I would not.
I think maybe maybe not. All right, we have serious subject matter to get to today, referring to Gary Bettman's press conference on Monday afternoon. We will get to that. There are some other on-ice related storylines that are going on right now, actually really off-ice related, but more implicating what's going on the ice. And there's Jack Eichel trade rumors with the Vegas Golden Knights that we'll go through. Cole Caulfield has been sent down to the AHL in Montreal, so we'll touch on the Canadiens. And we got some hot teams to start the season, like the Panthers and the Hurricanes, that are still going strong that I'm sure we'll get to as well. But Mike, I'll start with you on the Gary Bettman press conference that was, I think, entirely about, I didn't listen to the whole 54 minutes. I heard most of it, but I think most of it was entirely on Kyle Beach, the Chicago Blackhawks sexual assault scandal, and all the fallout that has come with that. The commissioner answering questions. And Mike, it feels like he could not have done a worse job.
I know, it's so unfortunate. I mean, it really is. Today, just honestly, digging deeper graves is really what they were doing out there talking. But here's the problem, and I hate this, but they're lawyers, man. These guys are just lawyers. They can't really say anything, and they know that because there is still a legal process going on with this whole thing. So they can't legally implicate people or implicate things. But at the end of the day, the human side of you and I and everyone listening who don't really have, don't have any, legal ramifications of talking of what's being said. We wanted so much more. We wanted so many more questions to be answered. And really, it was just Bettman talking around a room like he always does and didn't really say much of anything. And when he did say some stuff, he kind of put his foot in his mouth.
Yeah. There were some layups that he just didn't take, the question about providing counseling or resources to the high schooler from Michigan, or the former high schooler that was assaulted by Brad Aldrich in 2013. And your answer is we need to gather more information. Like there was
Yeah,
a conviction years ago for
yeah.
that. I don't. What else do you need? We have a very thorough report that was done, that was started by the Chicago organization, that came out last week. I'm through 60 pages of that 109-page investigation, and like every page makes me angrier and angrier because
It turns your stomach, man.
it
Like some of that
turns.
stuff.
Yeah, and it makes me even angrier today hearing Bettman, because it really does feel like they're just doing whatever they can to get it over with, sweep it under the rug, and they'll go on with their day. And that there's no real emotion, there's no real action, and like you said, they're only thinking of it from PR and legal standpoints.
That's what they're doing, and sadly, I didn't expect much else from Bettman and Daly today. Honestly, I didn't. I really did not. Not that's clearly not right, but I'm just based on everything, based on the last like 20 years of listening to Gary Bettman talk about issues and key problems in the NHL that arise in sticky situations. He never wants to talk about them. But here's one thing. You talked about like a layup. You talked about some interesting comments that were made today. There was a question that was asked today, actually. It was somewhat of a follow up about, I'm just trying to pull it up here. Bill Daly was asked about the Bill Peters, and if what's coming next of this Bill Peters investigation into the Akeem Alou stuff, and he said the investigation is done as we approach the full 2 years. Alou will be I'll say the whole tweet by Frank Saravalli. When asked, Bill Daly said that Bill Peters' investigation is done. As we approach 2 full calendar years since Dreamer Akeem Alou, brought Peters' racist language to light, Daly said NHL has contacted Alou's representative for next steps, if any. And Alou's reps responded to Frank Saravalli saying, "News to me." That was just another thing that really kind of perked my ears when I was like, wait, this Akeem Alou, which they came out and basically the exact same thing. There was a big, massive stink that was made about, not a stink, that's the wrong word to use, but there was like this uncomfortable discussions that we forced the NHL into having. They had to make some moves, and then they were going to have an investigation to figure out exactly what went on. There was really no follow-up on this, and then somebody followed up today just to say, hey, by the way, what about this? You said you were going to do something about this, and we haven't heard anything. And all of a sudden, they say, "Oh, that investigation's done and over with. We've told everybody that we didn't find anything. There was no further consequence." And it's like, did I miss that?
Mhm.
When did that come out? So how can I sit here and say that I trust the NHL that they're going to do everything they can to help Kyle Beach when they didn't do that for Akeem Alou in his situation?
Also, you had Bettman on Kevin Cheveldayoff today, who was it seemingly completely absolved
Yeah.
of any wrongdoing. And Bettman on Cheveldayoff said, "quote He thought it had been fully resolved to the people he reported to. Kevin was such a minor player in all of this. When they were doing the investigation, the only person who placed Kevin in the room for the meeting was Kevin. Because of his seniority, he left that meeting believing that it would be handled with due process." That's a tougher one than Joel Quenneville. Joel Quenneville obviously had a lot of pull in that organization at the time, and I think you can seriously wonder how much Kevin Cheveldayoff did. At the same time, he was an individual that was in that room. There were not many people in that room that were told about what was going on um, with Kyle Beach and Brad Aldrich when John McDonough said, "I will handle it" at the end of it. Quenneville was one of them. And Cheveldayoff was another. Now, does he deserve to be suspended? Did he deserve to be fined? Did he deserve to lose his job? I don't. And I don't like criticizing when I don't have a clear solution in my own head of what should have happened.
Right.
But in this situation, I feel like nothing is not the right answer for Kevin Cheveldayoff.
If at the very least, even if you didn't think that like Kevin Cheveldayoff deserved to be fired or deserved to be fined or suspended indefinitely, what that would have done if there was some sort of punishment is it would have it would have set more of a precedent, and like, so they want GMs, they want people in the organizations to come out and speak about things if they hear about this type of conduct going on within an organization, right? If you would have punished him for this, then you definitely would have people coming out and saying, "Hey, I'm seeing this happen." Because if you don't come out and speak about it, then your job could be on the line in the future if it comes to light. Whereas if you do come out and speak about it and you talk about it right away, then you've done the right thing. But by not penalizing Cheveldayoff, that's kind of saying, yeah, you can kind of stay quiet and assume that other people are gonna go through and do the right
Right.
things, and you're not going to be punished just because you're not going to, because we didn't feel that didn't have that much authority. But it's a slippery slope, man. Like it was just a chance to kind of send a message and set a precedence within the NHL that there is a no zero tolerance when it comes to this kind of stuff. And I feel that they missed the mark.
Yeah, those zero tolerance. I mean, even that makes me think of the questions Bettman got today about the fact that the Blackhawks were fined $2 million when the example that Mark Lazarus of the Athletic brought up was the New Jersey Devils for circumventing the cap a decade ago were fined $3 million. And on the surface, that can look like the NHL believes that circumventing the cap is a bigger offense than covering up sexual assault. I didn't go all in on that one. I do think it's a bad look the way Bettman answered it, for sure. The way he answered it, saying that it's a different context, there are different facts. I think he could have done a much better job handling it. I think if we know now, and the one report says that the Blackhawks ownership did not know anything about this, it stopped at John McDonough, which is what it appears to have happened.
Right.
Then I guess I don't really see what you're finding the Blackhawks organization for, having the wrong person in place. I don't know.
Yeah, and that's what I was gonna ask. I was gonna ask you, like, what do you think? Like, how much should ownership have blame in all of this, right? Because at the end of the day, that's ownership that's paying that $2 million fine, right? It's not Stan Bowman, right? Like, it's not John McDonough, it's not Joel Quenneville, it's ownership. And if it's true that ownership really only found out about this back in May when it first came to light, then I mean,
now
can you give them like this big, massive fine? I mean, it was on. They went out and did their internal investigation when they found out about it.
Yeah. Now that's right. Where I do want to criticize them though is they did not want to stand up for one of their former players, because as even Kyle Beach said in his TSN interview, the Blackhawks didn't want any part of this right away. The NHL didn't want any part of this right away. Even Safe Sport didn't want any part of this right away. And while the NHL, who is a part of that criticism, that you did not get a hold of this until you were basically made to, the Blackhawks were as well. So the NHL is not going to be the ones to fine Chicago for that. Obviously, that's just a bad look on their part.
From what I gather, is ownership was led to believe that the Beach comments were baseless, which clearly they were not, which we now 100% know about. And ownership now also knows that, which is why they went and they did a clean sweep of the organization, and the league went and swept out a couple other guys around the league as well. Chevy not being one of them, apparently.
Yeah.
But it's just, it really is a disappointing time in hockey, and a disappointing in a sense that so much more could have been done. To me, the NHLPA and Donald Fear is now kind of the next domino that everyone's looking at. There was a conference call Monday that apparently lasted like 2.5, 3 hours. And then apparently, I'm just reading this now, actually. This is a statement following the executive board meeting. On today's call, Don Fear recommended that an independent investigation be commenced by outside legal counsel in order to review the NHLPA's response to the Kyle Beach matter. The executive board is currently voting on this matter now. So that is kind of the latest, I guess, kind of an up-to-the-minute thing on what's going on there.
This is kind of in line, by the way, with a few days ago. There were I don't remember exactly who was reporting it. I think from a couple different people that NHL players were not happy with Donald Fear. That how did
No,
this guy? How
here's
did you not investigate this situation? And actually, Emily Kaplan tweeted earlier, that a player she talked to said, "quote For 9 years, NHLPA knew it did nothing to investigate nor help Kyle Beach in dealing with this trauma. They stopped talking to him after the second call. How
yep,
was he left on an island?" And I
yep,
think that's legitimate criticism. I think Donald Fear having as much power as he does in that players association and those at the top, like that is to me, that's the next place to look is how did this happen? How did this not get stopped in the act? And how was this person allowed to be in the NHL organization? And then how did he be able to leave quietly and have it go weeks before that even happened? And I think we're just kind of going, organization by organization, person by person, and weeding out those that allowed that to take place. And to me, Donald Fear is the next person, and the PA is the next place you have to look.
yeah, absolutely. And the question is like, who is Donald Fear looking out for here? Because if he's looking out for the players, which he's supposed to be, it's the players' union, right? He's not supposed to be Gary Bettman's henchman. He's supposed to look out for the players and the players only. Kyle Beach was a player within the player union. And when he comes with such a strong, you know, with a strong claim like that, you would have to think that you would have to investigate this to the full extent to figure out if this happened, if this didn't happen, if accounts are if it happened differently. Like, you gotta figure this out, because this isn't just something that should have been swept under the rug. Absolutely. And if by after 2 phone calls they flushed him and they didn't do anything to help this guy, it's like, who are you working for exactly? Like, is this getting rid of this situation? Was this because this is the best interest of your relationship with the league and Gary Bettman? Because this certainly is not helping the player who is a member of the union that you're the head of. I don't understand it. I really don't. And that's a question that really needs to be asked, and something that needs to get answered by Donald Fear.
All of this just made me so angry the past week. This is one of the darkest days, if not the darkest day, of Gary Bettman's being commissioner of this league. I thought
Well,
today
how do you
that's what I
feel?
thought watching the press conference.
How do you feel about the ongoing discourse about Gary Bettman no longer being fit to lead the NHL, and people asking for his head and asking to remove him as commissioner of the National Hockey League? Is this something, and I know I'm kind of springing this on you, and this is a kind of a
Yeah.
tough discussion to have, but I guess moving forward, do you think that there'll be some serious questions for the league, for, owners, if this is the guy that they believe can kind of, lead this
I
this
think
like, to get change, right? Like, change is needed socially within hockey culture, and clearly it hasn't happened over Bettman.
I
Like, it,
yeah. I
like, he
I
fumbled a couple
was
of things.
I was extremely disappointed on so many occasions during that press conference today. Like the Akeem Alou comment, and then immediately having his representatives come out and say, like, this is news to us. Like, he maybe lied openly multiple times in that presser today. And like, I think I'm angry enough, and I think this is bad enough to warrant it, to warrant looking at the job of the commissioner and wondering if he let down Kyle Beach in such a way, and his system, and his admitting today, or his trying to argue today, that hockey culture, it doesn't allow things like this to happen when
Yeah,
we're just finding out that it did. And add that into other things like concussions and whatnot. Like, I would be the person that would want to make that argument that he should not
yeah.
be the commissioner of this league anymore. Now, what do I say? I think will
How,
happen? I
how
don't even think it gets discussed, because I think it would because he's the commissioner, it would have to come from the owners. And
right.
I don't know, Mike. Like, I don't see that
He's
happening.
making them a boatload of money. Like, he's making them a boatload of money. He just negotiated that ESPN deal, and at the end of the day, money talks, unfortunately. But yeah, like, I understand that from an owner's perspective, but also, like, if we believe that the NHL didn't hear about this until May, which is what we are led to believe, that is what he has come out and said. And if I remember the report, they also said, like, the NHL wasn't really, it didn't go up to the food chain to get to the NHL, right? Like it kind of stayed internal. So they didn't find out about this until the lawsuit was filed last May. So if that's the case, it is a little bit tough for me to try and fire Gary Bettman for his role in this, because everything is it's reactive. Like he's just reacting to everything that's kind of happening. I'll say this though, the one thing that bothers me even more than not suspending or not giving further punishment out to Shovel Day off is the fact that he didn't intervene and tell Joel Quenneville to not go on the bench that one night against Buffalo. Or no, who do you play? Boston.
Boston, I think.
Was it Boston they played? No, they played Boston the other day.
It wasn't Buffalo. I know that.
No, okay. So whoever they played, I can't remember who they played, but he probably should not have been on the bench that night.
No,
at the very, very least, whoever they were going up against, and I just can't understand why he didn't feel that he could have stepped in and said, "Hey, look, we need to have a chat. Until we do, I think it's best that you're not on the bench for the Florida Panthers until we figure out exactly what's up." That part he fumbled so bad. And the Panthers too. The Panthers should have known that this was not a good idea to have him out there. That was a failure in my estimation. Probably one of the biggest failures about how all of this was dealt with. Well, that's actually this is very minor at probably
in the last like
in the last week. Yeah, exactly. In the last week. But yeah, it's just a tough story. Like we don't get into sports to have to discuss this type of stuff, but when something like this happens, it turns your stomach. It gets you so angry. And I feel at the end of the day, like I feel for Kyle Beach. I'm just glad that it's not over. There's still a legal battle going on. He still has to go out there and prove that he was, there was wrongdoing, but at least he people know his story and he has support. And it seems like there was a lot of people who kind of came out and said, like, good for you.
The outrage has been appropriate, in my opinion. Yeah. Like, I think the outrage has been appropriate, and he was courageous enough to kind of come forward with a story, not just in the lawsuits or in the investigation. Because again, reading that, like, the interview was stomach turning. Reading the investigation is just like, it pisses me off. It makes me so heartbroken for him. But man, like let's try it. Let's leave it there because we'll have more, I'm sure, storylines to talk about as things happen over the next couple of days and in weeks. But we'll see how far this thing stretches. What happens with the NHLPA and the lawsuits coming. We'll try to transition here because we do have big news in the league to talk about as well. As awkward as it might sound to go from that story to the Adam Fox contract, Jack Eichel trade rumors, and some other stuff happening in the league. We'll do that when we return. But first, I just want to remind everybody that this episode is brought to you by BetOnline, your number one spot for the best basketball and football action this season, as well as hockey. Their new updated desktop or mobile website is ready. Go check it out. Sign up today. Receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use the promo code LOCKEDON to receive the bonus from basketball, football, baseball, postseason, NHL, boxing, UFC, favorite Vegas casino games. They got everything. Don't wait to take advantage of all their amazing offers. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet all your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, the big news on Monday for the New York Rangers was they locked up defending Norris winner Adam Fox, 7 years, $9.5 million per year.
Whew.
Mike, it seems like this is just the number everyone's going for. All the big top defensemen that are signing are just going for 9.5, it seems.
Yeah, except for Morgan Riley. Good guy, Riley.
Yeah.
Good guy, Riley. Signing for 7.5. An actual fair market deal. It's not like that's a discount. That should be what the market is for these types of guys. But here we are. Yeah, this is a big one. This is not one I expected to see, though. This is record breaking in terms of a player coming out of their ELC. Record breaking contract. And yeah, he won the Norris last year. He's a hell of a defenseman, but this seems super early to bet large on a guy like that. I don't know, but like Do you feel like this is a big gamble for the Rangers?
I think it's a bit of a gamble because of how early it is. I'm pretty convinced that he's that good. I think we have
Yeah.
some good evidence on that. I think this is just kind of interesting how the Rangers and Chris Drury as their general manager has operated the last few months. Like I immediately thought of the Igor Shesterkin contract, paying him north of $5 million a year in net when he had only started 40 games in his career. Like,
Yeah.
all right, like I think you're going to be right on this. Like I think Adam Fox is going to continue to be one of the best defensemen in hockey. I think Igor Shesterkin is going to be a starting goalie in the league for many, many years. But man, it seems like you jumped the gun here. Now, the one other thing that I thought of for this type of strategy is this is kind of what Tampa did. Tampa, not so much the past couple years, but like when Yzerman was first building that thing up, like he was signing guys early. Like he signed Hedman early. He signed
Yep.
Kucherov early. Remember Kucherov before he signed the extension he's on now was on like the most discounted rate in the league. Like
5.6 billion, yeah.
it was something like that. So but on the flip side, it worked for Tampa. John Chayka, when he was GM of the Coyotes, operated under the same strategy by signing Jacob Chikrin. Now that one's maybe worked, but he signed Clayton Keller to a deal like that. There were others where it didn't really work. In Arizona, they tried to be we're going to sign the guy early and get him at a discounted rate because in 3 years he's going to be worth 20% more. And for them, it didn't work. So I think this is risky by the Rangers. On the upside, I think in 3 years, if you had waited to pay Adam Fox, he could be worth $11.5 million for what inflation could look like in the league. But on the downside, like you just kind of went through, like you're having to pay him early. And if he isn't the player that you saw last year, well, then you're going to be in cap hell pretty quickly. So
Like,
I like it, but I don't want to crush them for it.
no, I'm not going to crush him for it. I don't think it's
Obviously,
odds are it will probably work out. Like he is
great.
a really, really good defenseman, like top 5 to 10 defenseman in the NHL. But I just look at their cap structure, like the situation they got going on over there, and like they already have 70 million committed to 15 guys next year. So 70 to
Wow.
15 guys. So they're still going to have to add 7 to 8 players, and they'll have about 10.6 million to do it. They
Yep.
also have Capo Caco, who's an RFA that they're going to have to sign 2 years from now. They're going to have Alexi Lafreniere that they're going to have to sign. Ryan Strome is a UFA this year that they
Miller.
probably would like to bring back. Keandre Miller in a couple of years. Alexander Georgiev is also has a contract extension that's due.
Yeah, they probably trade him, given that they signed Shesterkin. It's tough for me to see them have enough cap. They'll pay him whatever he would cost.
Yeah, but they still got to replace that money, like replace that body with a player, right? Like they still need to give a backup goaltender some money there, right? So there's just they're really going to be tight up against the cap for the next couple of seasons. So you got guys like Chris Kreider who's making 6.5. They signed Mika Zibanejad to an $8.5 million extension. Barclay Goodrow's making 3.6. Trouba's making $8 million for the next while. Like they've got a bunch of guys here. They signed Patrick Nemeth to a $2.5 million in like 3 years.
Don't like that.
Wow, that's interesting. There's someone where you could shed some salary, probably. Although he's got a modified no trade clause as well. Holy, who is his agent? He's got a super agent. Oh my goodness,
great agent.
Apparently. But it's just like the cap structure and I hate this. The first thing I always look at when I see players signing deals now is I look at their team's cap situation. And maybe this is just because, being a Maple Leafs guy, that is clearly the first thing that people look at based on how the cap structure is here in Toronto. But it's the first thing I look at. And that's how I kind of base my deal. Not whether or not Adam Fox is worth $9.5 million, but it's like, is that going to be worth the cap percentage that he's going to be up? Is that going to screw with potentially trying to re-sign Ryan Strome or Capo Caco or Sammy Blais or Keandre Miller? You know what I mean? Like that's the only part that really I hate that I do, but that's what the salary cap kind of makes you do. It makes you think about the future a couple of years in advance.
Yep. All right, so big news for the Rangers, and then just to kind of go over it, Jack Eichel to the Vegas Golden Knights was something that sounded like it could have even happened on Friday night. But since then, we've had a big old bucket of ice water just dumped on top of it, it seems. Frank Zaravelli, Darren Dreger all saying that talks have cooled. And I saw people tweeting me today, obviously doing Locked On Sabres and being here in Buffalo, about William Karlsson getting injured. He's going to be out for the next 6 weeks. The Golden Knights have like half their forward crop that are out now. I mean, for the short term, that could be worrisome for them in terms of where they'll end up in the standings. So Karlsson's out 6 weeks, and everyone's like, oh, look, now they're going to trade for Eichel. Eichel's got to have a surgery, people. Like he's not a short-term fix. He's going to be months away from returning to action for you. That is a long-term type deal. That's a deal where you're thinking about the postseason, really, if you're at the earliest. So the Golden Knights have always made sense to me for this trade. They've got a great young prospect in Peyton Krebs, although he has not had a good start to the season. They've got
might be why you know the Golden Knights are more likely to make that deal now, right? Like
they're ready to do it.
That's why they're intensifying. But from what I've heard, is this isn't necessarily a like I think the Golden Knights are softening on the ask. I don't think it's the ask that's the problem anymore. It's the fact that they want either Buffalo or a third team to retain money on Eichel because they can't afford to bring him in at his full $10 million cap. And that's where the snag is being hit if I'm kind of reading this correctly.
I think so, and I think that's a valid concern because I don't think I would be blown away if the Sabres retained anything on that contract. I think they were already not happy with the way talks were going, and if suddenly, I think that's really where the Rangers fell apart. That not just that. I mean, the Rangers weren't willing to give up like their even second tier prospects. But the Sabres do not want to retain money in any way, shape, or form. Now, it was interesting. Jesse Granger from The Athletic, who is very plugged into that organization, he was talking out loud, but I was talking to some other Buffalo media guys, and they were saying like Jesse Granger knows enough that he's not going to throw a name out there unless he's heard it. And he mentioned Shea Theodore going back in an Eichel deal because they want to sign Zach Whitecloud to a monster, or not a monster, but an extension, and they don't want to necessarily have that much money tied up in the blue line.
They signed him to that extension today.
To Whitecloud?
Whitecloud. I'm pretty sure I saw that come across the ticker that he signed.
Did I miss that? Whitecloud.
I think he signed a deal today. I don't think it was for much money though. It was 6-year deal at like
6 years, $2.75 million.
Yeah.
So that's not a lot actually. But anyways, that's who we threw out there the other day with Shea Theodore. And that one was interesting to me too, because I don't even think he really, like, would the Sabres want that? They've been looking for 20, 21, 22-year-old prospects.
Oh, yes.
He's great.
You're not going to take Shea Theodore?
No, like, I want Shea Theodore, but I think you're flipping him.
I think you're flipping 24, him. 25.
He's 26.
Okay, so he still has like 7 years of quality hockey ahead of him.
He's got 4 years left on his contract at $5.2 million. I just think by the time the Sabres are good, he's a 28, 29-year-old defenseman, and I don't want to be giving a 29-year-old defenseman an 8-year extension.
But what are you going to do? You're going to trade for Nick Hague, who you hope becomes a sliver of what?
Well, that's the other thing. Theodore is so valuable. I think you're only getting Shea Theodore. Vegas isn't Vegas. You think what else is Vegas throwing on top of Theodore? Because then I'll listen. But if it's just Theodore and then a throw-in or a couple throw-ins, I'd rather be going for your number one prospect. You throw in one of your next best prospects, and I'm getting multiple draft picks on top of it. I think you want to be going for volume here. But again, I think there's a case to be made.
Oh no. Go for volume, eh? Isn't that exactly what's his nuts said when he traded away Ryan O'Reilly?
Well, that was crap volume. I mean, that was like
volume.
I'm looking for 4 quarters. They got like 4 pennies for that deal. But I know what you mean. Like, he's that good. He's the best player you'd get back in a deal. So it is kind of crazy to say.
What have you heard on Calgary? I hear Calgary's kicking tires there. Do you see a deal that could fit?
Kicking tires.
Strongly kicking tires. Darren Dreger was on TSN.
He said strongly? Okay.
He said strongly kicking tires. He said more than just kicking tires, actually. And they're like one of the hottest teams in the league right now. They've won 6 straight. Jacob Markstrom is like 3 shutouts already on the year, the early favorite to win the Vezina.
Yep.
Like they're playing some really strong, good hockey, and I wonder if they're ready to make a move, and kind of ruin what they got going on. But like, if you could add Jack Eichel without having to separate, one of those big, massive pieces from your team, and if you could get, a first round pick, maybe Matt Coronado, maybe give up one of those defensemen that you have, maybe you could make something work there.
I think they could. I like that offer you just gave, and Coronado looks really good, by the way. I saw a highlight of him the other night. Just looks spectacular. And the one thing that Calgary has that kind of is unlike Vegas, because Vegas, anyone really you're taking on to bring salary back is a good player. Like, is a valuable player that Vegas wants to retain. Like, I've seen Alex Tuck's name thrown in there. Like, that's not a cap dump. Vegas doesn't really have one of those. Calgary has Milan Lucic. And you would need to throw maybe a little more salary on top of that, but just to make the cap work, because the Sabres, by the way, would have to do that too. They'd be under the cap floor if they traded Eichel. So they need to take back a salary in terms of a player for the short term. So the cap would work with Calgary. They've got the prospects. They've got the picks. I think I would rank them second right now. I'd rank them second to Vegas. Teams that would get this done, I would put them number 2.
From what I'm hearing, Vegas is the front runner. It sounds like Calgary is a number 2.
Kinda.
Not even that distant of a number 2. Like, if we heard in the next week that a trade goes down and it's Calgary, I'm not going to be shocked. That's not coming out of nowhere. If we hear it's Minnesota, I'm like, oh, wow, I did not see that coming.
The only other team I wouldn't be stunned is Anaheim.
Yes,
they're always the dark horse in this.
Yeah.
I think they're dumb if they do it, because I think that means they're trying to win now, and I think they're nuts if they do that. But
well, I mean, they don't need to win now. I mean, well, yes, they are somewhat winning now, but it also gives you your number 1 center for the next 10 years. You can build it on that.
Right, he's not 30. That's right. All right, we've got a couple more things to get to real quick on in the back half of the show here. But real quick, want to remind you this episode is brought to you by DirecTV Stream. A simple way to get all the entertainment you love without the hassle. DirecTV Stream brings you live TV and on-demand favorites together like never before, which means you can watch your favorite sports, movies, and shows all in one place. And the best part, there is no annual contract. So stop waiting and get your TV together with DirecTV Stream. You can learn more at directtv.com. That is directtv.com. All right. Cole Caulfield is sent down to the AHL. What did you think of this move for Montreal?
Somewhat surprising, but also not at the same time. First of all, my betonline.ag futures ticket is going in the garbage now. I took him to win Rookie of the Year. But anyways, look, just 1 assist through 10 games. He's only 20 years old. He's struggling a little bit here in the NHL in his first full season against more than just, well, I guess last year they went deep enough. They played against American teams, but, he's been struggling this year. So, I mean, send him down to Laval, to the AHL, regain his confidence, and then bring him back up. I think we know that this team, with which Montreal's 2-8, man, 2-8 right now. This team isn't going anywhere. They lost way too many key pieces. Shea Weber is done for the year. Who knows when Carey Price is going to come back to the team, if he comes back to the team. Joel Edmondson has been out all season. He's also on an indefinite leave, if I recall. And then they lost their best two-way defensive forward in Phil Deneau. They just lost too many key pieces, and they haven't found a way to get past that and to work off of that. And it's resulted in a 2-8 start to the season. And Cole Caulfield has 1 assist. I think Nick Suzuki, only has a couple of points himself. This team just isn't scoring. Their penalty kill is 50%. Legitimately, it's absolutely horrid. They can't stop anyone from scoring on the power play. So I think Cole Caulfield, just kind of get a reset, send him down to the AHL, have him find some success and kind of build his confidence back up. Probably a smart move.
Real quick, because we got to get out of here, but Caulfield was looking at Calder odds about a week ago, and he was second only to Trevor Zegras. The updated odds for that, Caulfield is now 4th. So even though he's in the AHL, he is still 4th in the Calder odds at plus 1,000, behind Lucas Raymond, who is the favorite, Trevor Zegras, who is now second, and Moritz Seider, who is third.
Detroit, man. Detroit's got a couple of youngins.
Yeah, and then Spencer Knight, Jeremy Swayman right after that. You get a couple of goalies, Florida and Boston. Your boy Michael Bunting, where's he? He's plus 2,000. Right after Bo, same odds as Bo Byram.
Hey, man, he's moving up. I think he was like plus 3,300 to start the year, so he's moving up a little bit.
Yep. All right. We're just tracking some Calder Trophy odds as we go along. Real quick answer because we do got to go. Florida or Carolina, more likely to fall apart, more likely to be a fraud. Florida or Carolina. Both teams off to amazing starts. Florida,
yeah, Florida. Florida's what 8-0-1. Carolina 8-0. Carolina's, man. They're deep. They're balanced. They're well coached. They got everything, and then
they're getting the
they've
saves.
got Freddie Anderson playing like Marty Brodeur, circa 1998. Like this guy's legitimately playing out of his freaking mind right now. I legitimately think that Carolina is potentially the best team in the East. I think that they are going to do it. Now, I think that Florida is number 2. So when you ask who's more likely to fall apart, neither, I guess is my answer. But if I had to pick between the two, I think that Carolina would come out victorious in a 7-game series between the two.
All right, that's going to do it for us on the Locked On NHL podcast. I'm already down in my fantasy league. Mahomes threw a pick on the first drive. Not good for me. Not good for you either, who picked the Chiefs to win outright, which wasn't even saying much. But
no. I got them on the spread.
On the spread. You're good anyway. Daniel Jones just threw a pick right in return. So it's a pick fest at Monday Night Football, which happened yesterday for those listening. So we're going to get out of here before we say anything more. Thanks for listening. I'll be back on Friday with Rachel Donner. Check out Locked On Sabres and Locked On Leafs with me and Mike. And follow us on Twitter. I'm at Sneaky Joe Sports. Mike's at Mickey_Canuck. And this has been the Locked On NHL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.